Hello, good people, and welcome to the Amateur Hour. My name's Justin.
My name's Tyler.
And we're finally back. And bigger than ever. That's right, we gained a full 81 pounds. No, I'm just kidding. We're back. It's been a long time. A long summer.
We're actually smaller because one's missing.
Yeah, we got one missing. We got to address it early, okay? We got one missing today. But
Disappointment.
It's okay. We still got the three of us. The three musketeers. What can you say? When you're missing one, you got three. What can I say, boys? It generally does feel good to be back. We got a lot to talk about today. A lot of things. We're going to run through a lot, okay? From where we've been and what happened last season to, some new things happening in the tech world, even getting into a little bit of personal lives. Everything is going to be absolutely fantastic for this episode, and I thank you guys for joining us. All 42 of you subscribers, or 43 now, I forget. Regardless, it's absolutely fantastic to have you back listening to us. Thank you very much for tuning in and choosing us. Because you know us, we're on all 4 platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. So let's get into it. First things first, where we were, what happened last season. It kind of ended abruptly. So we were prepping to end season 2, and we actually recorded quite a bit of episodes leading up to the end of season 2. But a lot of misfortunes happen in my life in particular, and I'm the one predominantly editing. So there was a lot happening, fortunately, in my personal life that I maybe discuss later, but currently I'll kind of stay off that topic because, I'd like to keep some things to myself. But yeah, it was very tough, let's just say, and it sucks that I wasn't able to, or that we weren't able to finish the season off like we wanted to. We talked about some very interesting things and interesting topics. We won't put out the episodes because it just feels like it'll definitely be out of the loop and just not fit with the flow. Especially with this new season. I hope you guys are enjoying. We have a new animatic, new thumbnail, per usual. Same original song by our wonderful Adam Stone. But yeah, more on that in a sec. But so unfortunately, we had a lot going on personally, and it was predominantly me. So we couldn't get through it. We talked about what happened, but let's now talk about what happened in our summer. Summer life must have been crazy or interesting, especially, with the good old Rona always being there. But I think first things first, let's address Austy's summer because we haven't heard from him in just a sec. So, Austy, how's your summer? Tell me about the wonders, diswonders, everything in between.
Well, it was a pretty big summer for me. In June, I bought a house, my first house, which was really, really cool. So a lot of my summer has been filled with building a house and mowing lawns and fixing fences, the lovely, awesome stuff of owning a house. And got to go on some vacations, which was really nice. I fortunately didn't get to see Justin this summer like last summer. Vacations were awesome. I got to go and see some grandparents, which was really, really cool. With coronavirus, you can't really go and see people very often, especially elderly people. It's just not safe. I mean, it was pretty cool, pretty good summer. Enjoying the house. Nice living not with my parents. Got my own little podcast space, basically, which is really, really awesome. Better internet. That's the best part about it. Better internet.
Yeah, you
internet
had some...
at my parents' house was bad.
You had some laggy internet, and I think at some instances during the podcast that some people might have been able to hear it, essentially. So I do apologize, but look, Austy's got new internet. There's a few things that I definitely want to ask you about kind of living on your own, right? Now that you have your own home, I mean, is it scary? Are you freaked out? I'm sure there's a level of, like a moment, right, where you're living with family, you get so used to it, right? You hear a noise outside, you're like, mom and dad's here, or your brother, whoever you're living with, right? So like, is there that level of like now you hear a noise and you're like, oh shoot, I'm the one who has to check it out, like.
Well, thankfully, I should have mentioned I do have one of my friends is living with me, but I have had a few of those moments, specifically not too long ago when I thought my roommate was going to be gone longer than he was, and all of a sudden it sounded like somebody was like bashing in my door, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, what's going on? So I had to leave my office and see what was going on, and I come in there and he's just like, I don't know, trying to cook or something. So he's like smacking pans and stuff, and it sounded like somebody was breaking down my door. That was a scary moment until I realized what was going on. But other than that, like the only real thing that I can think of was like, oh, I obviously was like super excited to move out and stuff, but then there was like really the second week, it was before my roommate moved in. I was like sitting in my house, nobody here but me and my dog, and I was like, man, this is kind of lonely. I kind of miss living with my parents a little bit. And then I was like, but I like having my space. That was the
I mean,
thing
how's
to
it
get you
feel
to.
with
That's that moment where you turn on a video game or a movie and you just crank the volume and you're like, wait, nobody gives a shit. This is awesome.
Yeah, I can play whatever music I want as loud as I want. I can poop with the door open. Fuck on that.
How are the so like I know too, like with the house comes the household duties. So how does like essentially, and pun intended, but how does transitioning from you go from certain household duties and like particular chores, right, that you do throughout your house, and now living out on your own, you got so much more to essentially worry about when it comes to a house. I mean, like, kind of walk me through that sort of experience.
Well, there was a little bit of an adjustment. Luckily, I just love keeping stuff clean. So, like, just chores in general aren't too bad. I mean, obviously, there are times where I'm like, I don't want to do this, and I put it off. Big adjustment was really like mowing and like thing. What I've always mowed. Whenever my dad loves to mow, so I didn't mow a ton, but I would mow. I mowed at one of my other houses that I lived in. But the difference is it's like I love it when it rains, but now I'm not a big fan of the rain because that means I got to mow in a couple days. So that was kind of an adjustment. And actually, my first time mowing at my house, my neighbor has a few dogs. I guess one got out, and this was before I knew my neighbors really at all. So I didn't know if it was their dogs or what. I started mowing, and this dog chased me around the yard for like 45 minutes while I mowed my backyard. Then I was just finishing up the backyard, prepared to go to the front yard, and I was like, oh God, this dog's out here. Is he going to tear me up? And thankfully, the neighbor came out and realized his dog was out there. But I'd say like really the biggest adjustment is like managing my time better. Because I've got to cook all my food myself now. I don't have a mother to just cook food for me. If I don't cook, then I have to go buy food, and so it's like then you got to also manage how much money you're spending and all that stuff. There was definitely a little bit of an adjustment, but it wasn't too bad.
Welcome to real life.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a slap in the face. I can definitely vouch for that.
Tyler's he's had the fortune of being able to be on his own essentially I mean, he kind of started a little bit earlier on, but I knew it was like it had to be more of adjustment for you, obviously, because it's been a while, right? Like, I mean, I even moved out just yet neither, and I can imagine all the different things I'm going to run into when moving out to my own home. All like you're saying, I mean, now, and then here's another thing too. We haven't even hit winter yet, so you're gonna have to do all the shoveling now too. And that's like one of those aspects that I know I'm not going to look forward to when getting my own home. I mean, I already kind of shovel, But now it's like I really have to shovel. Like there's no like, dad will get it or my brother. It's just like, no, I will have to.
Mhm.
So I could see, all those different aspects becoming an adjustment. I mean, no one really stops to think and when they're first moving out, like they just like so quick to want to be like, yeah, I just want to grow up and I want my own responsibilities. But like you never really gauge the large amounts of responsibilities that actually happen when you step out into, like, quote what Tyler says, the real world. And when you're stepping out there, like right now, it's like more or less, worrying about, oh, well, someone else is going to pick up the slack for you. No, now it's like you have to do it. It's a matter of survival and basic necessity of certain things you have to do, like managing food, right? And how much you're spending and the things you could sort of, can I spend on fun today or do I have to worry about my mortgage payment, or like
Yeah.
light and electricity and all that jazz.
Thankfully, God bless me, and I'm not, I don't have to worry too awful hard. I can spend some fun money most days, but I while you were talking, I was thinking about it. The biggest thing, the like moment, the, like oh shit moment for me was when I went back home for the first time to my parents' house, and I go home and like you just walk in that door and like I was going through the motions. I'm like, all right, do this. All right, go to my bedroom. My bedroom empty, and I was like, oh, I don't live here anymore. I
When I
forgot.
when I moved out, my bedroom was immediately like transformed into Chloe's bedroom because they were like, "Yeah, when you move out, Chloe needs her own room here." So brand new painted walls. They gave her a new bed. She's got her little crib thing in there. All of her toys are all over the place. They basically spoiled the crap out of her. But it was like, this is not mine anymore whatsoever. My
Yeah,
little girl took over my space.
yeah, that would be interesting too. My parents are about to turn my bedroom into my younger sister's bedroom since she's off at college. They're gonna take the her bedroom, and I don't know what they're doing with it. They're doing something with it, but it's like it's got a better floor plan to be used for other things. So I think they're gonna maybe turn it into like a dining room or something. I'm not really sure.
They just like turn your room into the rec room of the house. Like,
Dude,
you're like, have
that's what
some
happened to my older
respect.
sister. Just threw everything in there, and they're like, "All right, this is kind of the storage room."
Oh my lord.
Yeah. So I don't know for Tyler, for you. I don't know if this was like something like you realize. So like when you're a kid, your parents are always harping on you, like turn off lights when you're not in those rooms, all that stuff, right? Well, when I was at my parents' house, I was the world's worst. I would leave my bedroom light on. I'd be gone all day. Leave the bathroom light on all night because I'd go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. There is like one light on in my house at all times, and it's the room I'm in. I don't know like why, but the minute I
Yeah,
owned my own house, instantly it was like boom, lights are off.
that's how I am. Um, I have, I'll have a fan running to circulate air, and then I'll have like a light where I'm at, and everything else is off. But Sarah, she's like the complete opposite. She leaves the light on going from room to room, or like she has these warmer things all over the place where you like put the candle wax in for the scent and you turn it on.
Hmm.
And those are on all over the place. She has to sleep with the TV on, and I'm like, I turn it off, and like 45 minutes later, I get woke up again by the TV turning back on. So yeah, it's like I have to turn everything off, and then she has to turn everything on. So it's a constant back and forth battle.
No, it's like a switch flips in your head because when I was at my parents, lights were on. When we were moving me in, mom was like walking through the house, she was like leaving lights on, and I was just like following behind her, turning off all the lights. I was like, Mom, it doesn't grow on trees. Turn the lights off. Come on.
I'm trying to buy a house right now. I really hope the deal doesn't fall through. I don't think it will, but um I'm already looking into like doing the smart home stuff where you get all like the Z-Wave switches and you learn them all into a controller that looks for motion and temperatures and everything and makes everything super efficient. So I'm already doing that, like figuring out how it's all going to work. So when I do finally get in the house, I can just start hooking stuff up. Because yeah, I'm like, save as much energy as you can so the NIPSCO bill is not ridiculously high. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm always doing that.
Yeah, like I can imagine. Oh my goodness, I actually I can't imagine. I can't imagine being on my own. Not just yet, right? Because there's so much that goes into it that I haven't necessarily thought about myself. With that said, I
Yeah.
mean, Tyler, tell. You had an interesting summer, right? I mean, a lot of good, and a lot of bad. I know you went on a vacation in your summer. I mean, tell us how your summer went.
Well, I mean, for me, it's work a whole lot and then work some extra and then work a lot more after that. So work doesn't give you a break. Um, but I finally got some time where I just took a week vacation, a little more than a week, I think, actually. But we went down to Texas. My dad is building a steel processing plant down there. He's one of the project managers on it. So we went down there to visit him because he's been traveling down there, staying there for the week, and then he comes back like every other weekend or something like that. So he was like, "Well, why don't you guys come on down?" So we went down there. We went to a couple of different Six Flags in Texas. We went down to see the ocean. That was the first time I've seen the ocean, so that was pretty cool. We went to the USS Lexington. It's an old battleship that they turned into like a museum. You can see all the planes and you can walk through the whole ship and see how everything works and how they had it set up. That was pretty cool. We took Chloe to the state aquarium there. You could pet like sharks and stingrays, and that was cool too. And then we rented a few different houses. So we had one up on the beach. We had a hotel in, shoot, where was it? Dallas. And then we had one more. I can't remember what town it was, but it was closer to Dallas still. But that one was like a house. It was like an Airbnb, and we just did a couple of little things at each one. We seen the Battle of the Alamo, but we didn't get to go inside the church because they stopped doing tours when we got there. So that was the vacation. Vacation was pretty fun. And then my dad took us to one of the guys that he's working with. He had a huge barbecue, and I mean, he was cooking burgers and steaks and chicken breasts. I mean, this guy, if you've never seen a grill master before, that this is the guy. He wouldn't tell you what he's seasoning it with. He was like super super strict on how he was cooking it, but everything came out so perfect. It was like that was hands down the best dinner I had while we were there. But that was the highlight of the summer. And I guess the next highlight of the summer is this house I'm trying to buy. So we're getting through the process, but it's a pain to say the least.
I was just gonna say, oh yeah, the process is a pain.
Oh
Believe me.
yeah,
The
yeah.
amount of
Well,
paperwork you have to sign, the amount of things they need from you. Sometimes they ask your
yeah. You,
parents.
you have to give up earnest money.
Yep.
Then you have to sign a whole bunch of papers.
Mm-hmm.
So we signed the first group of papers, and then it's like, okay, you have 8 days to get an inspection. So right away, I called a person to get an inspection, paid $350 for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, the inspection went through, and then we had to file for an extension because he found some problems with the house. And now we have to go back and forth because the owners, they're like, they're we're not putting any more money into this house, and there's a water problem in the basement. And then the owners just kind of like, well, there's never been a water problem before, and we found a drain that was clogged and blah blah blah. And I'm like, it's all right, guys, I don't actually care, it's just part of the process. Just give me 5 grand off and sign the next piece of paper.
Awesome.
And but apparently everything is just, it has to be a big deal about every little step and the whole process. Let's hurry up and get to this point and then wait 3 weeks.
I asked whenever I was doing all my stuff, I asked my realtor a lot of questions because I was like very interested in the process. Because at some point I want to get into renting and then like maybe buying and selling stuff, fixing stuff up, on my horizons. But I was asking my realtor, and she said that like once you sign those papers, it's like literally takes like 28 days them to get through all the paperwork to go to all the people that it needs to go to for all the notaries and all this stuff and all that stuff. And it's like so many people and not everybody does it immediately. So it's like if you sign that paperwork and you have 26 days till you're closing, like you're rushing. It's kind of wild. It's like how does something take that long?
Yeah,
Right?
it
I
is
was going
insanity.
through. I'm going through a different company. It's Churchill, and they pre-approve you, and they do all of like an underwriting process first, and they get everything lined up. So that next process where you have to wait a month just to close, it's supposed to make that a lot easier and faster. And they do a thing called Churchill Certified. And the way that they explained it to me is the Churchill Certified gives you kind of a hand up above other people because when you're putting bids in on a house and stuff, when they see the Churchill Certified, they're like, he's already got everything figured out. And you can step in, even with a lower bid than someone, you can step in and they'll take you over someone else because they don't have to work for 2 months on it.
That
So
makes sense.
that's kind of cool. I'm kind of waiting to see if this process really is a lot easier or if it doesn't actually take as long.
Mhm.
Because if it is like that, I'm gonna definitely recommend it to anyone in the future that buys a house.
Are you signing all your paperwork virtually, or are you going in and signing paperwork?
Oh, it's all electronic.
Yeah, that's like the new thing that the real estate
Mhm.
industry is doing now because of the COVID. Like all but last closing, my day of closing, everything was signed virtually up until then.
Yeah, from what I understand, when you actually go to the closing, my realtor calls it the closing table. Then you go to a room with like 8 or 10 people, and they're just passing books around and sign here, blah 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 blah. So I
Uh,
guess at that point, I'll actually be able to pick up a pen.
my experience was after I signed all the virtual stuff, and then day of my closing, did one last walkthrough when the house was completely empty. The people, had moved out, and they had done everything, cleaned everything. So I looked at everything, made sure there was no like hidden mold or anything like that. And then I went to go sign the paperwork, and it was just one lady, but the stack of papers that I had to sign was ridiculous. Much, much.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that. I
But
basically told my realtor, "You need to talk to me like I'm an idiot and I know nothing."
That's what I told mine. I was like,
So,
look,
so
I've
I'm
never
like,
bought a house.
explain everything you put in front of me
Yeah.
thoroughly.
Uh, my realtor was one of my older sister's friends, her sorority friends, and so like she was like just texting me like a normal human being, and like wasn't like super duper professional. I could just like ask her whatever I wanted, and she would answer. And I was like, I'm sorry, I probably sounds really stupid, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants right now. I said, you could like totally take advantage of this situation and make way more off of me, but I was like, I appreciate that you're not.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I got a really good friend from work, and it's actually someone that is in the family for him. So I'm like, yeah, hook me up with her number because before I went through 3 or 4 different realtors, and they were people that I found online that are local to the area, and one was actually recommended from the Churchill place. And the first realtor, I told this lady, I'm not spending over $200,000. I want to stay in like these 2 school districts. I still get emails. 90% of the houses she sends me are 250 and up,
Mm.
or she'll send me one that's like 35,000 that is a tear down and then you rebuild. Tell me how that's going to work right now.
either way, with that said, we're going to cut to our first break in a long time. I hope you guys enjoy our new sponsors. Be sure to check them out. All of who we affiliate with will be in the link in the description. Stay tuned, though. We have a lot we're going to get into. Get ready. A lot to talk about in the tech world coming up after these sponsors. Hope you enjoy. Looking for a fun new way to eat popcorn? Then I have the place for you. Kelly's Kernels has 68 flavors to choose from. Try out their delicious birthday cake flavor or their cheesy cheddar flavor. If you want to go classic, the Chicago style flavor is for you. Either way, you have a wide variety of flavors to choose from. But that's not all. They offer other treats such as shaved ice, cotton candy, and mini melts. Be sure to enjoy the dine-in experience and bring the whole family. So come on down to Kelly's Kernels, where it's always poppin'. Located at 13226 Lincoln Plaza Way, Cedar Lake, Indiana. Link in the bio. Enjoy high-octane gaming with the Grim Reaper live on Twitch. Watch the Reaper as he plays through a plethora of game titles, such as Call of Duty Warzone, Call of Duty Zombies, Valorant, Minecraft, and more. Join him as he competes against high competition in COD Warzone tournaments for large cash prizes. You can catch the Grim Reaper streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, 6 to 11 p.m. CDT. Just search twitch.tv/The Grim Reaper. Link in the bio. And we're back from that word from our sponsors. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors, and give them a check. Look them up. All of their links are going to be in the description. Again, anyone we associate with and work with, it's going to be in the link in the description, so you can give them a follow. Tell them we sent you, per usual. So be sure you guys check that out. And thank you to BMMB Byron for our latest animation and artwork. Thank you so much. A round of applause for him as well. And be sure to check out Adam Stone. He's got a new song out. I'm sure you guys are going to really love it. It's some solid stuff. Some almost like a new table has turned, essentially, of him dipping into like this more harder music, so to speak. So I hope you guys enjoy that as well. You can follow him, again, link in the description. Be sure to check him out. Fantastic sponsor of the podcast, as usual. But with that said, Tyler, tell us about what's happening in terms of California. You brought this to our attention, and we want to hear more about it.
I don't think it's California that necessarily is doing it, but they're participating, as well as Oregon, Washington, Vermont, and Hawaii. And I think they're actually doing it in Canada as well. But what it is, it's an energy saving program, and they're targeting computers. So there's a lot of, how do I say, stipulations, I guess. So it's targeted towards pre-builts. So if you go buy like an Alienware or a Dell or an HP, a pre-built system, they're not allowing certain computers to be imported into their states unless they're certified for energy saving. And basically what it is, you have to have a certain type of power supply that's a certain level of efficiency. If you have graphics cards and high power RAM and all that stuff, it all has to be certified for a unit to be able to be imported. And what it is, California, they're saying that there is like 6 or 7% of their energy used is when computers are idling. So they're wanting to say that when your computer is idling and not being used, that is, I guess, 6% alone in the state. So, and I'm assuming that number's probably a pretty round ballpark number for the other states as well, possibly Canada. I don't know about Canada though. But the big thing is, when you game on your computer and then you leave it running for the rest of the day, how much power is it using? And what type of power supply is it running so it's more efficient or less efficient? And if you're doing, I don't know if mining or anything like that counts because those computers are running 24/7. But then they also said if you built your own computer, then it doesn't matter. So that part I don't understand. So if I buy an Alienware or an HP or someone else's pre-built gaming system and I live in one of these areas, it has to be certified or I can't purchase it. But if it's an uncertified machine, I can buy all of the parts and have them shipped to my house and build it and legally run it.
Yeah, so for what I've seen, in terms of like this sort of energy, conservation, so to speak, is that first off, I mean, it's worth mentioning too that the reason that this is a thing, not only are they trying to like cut back on emissions in terms of like the energy we use and putting out emissions into the environment, is that they're kind of stepping in because we're literally using more power than what we're gonna have available in the future. So this is something that I mean I wasn't even aware until again Tyler brought this to my attention in terms of like these restrictions going on in California and the other places that he's mentioned. And yeah, so for what I understand, is that like you were saying, Tyler, like these companies are building these computers that are predominantly idling, and I don't know what it is, but they also because you were saying, well, like you don't have to worry about any sort of regulation when it comes to building your PC as opposed to a pre-made one. Well, as
Yeah,
far as I was
and that was
seeing,
the part that I was confused about
yeah, as far as I was
because
seeing though, oh, go ahead.
you can build your own computer, like order the parts off Amazon, Newegg, whatever. You can build it yourself, and it's not affected by these rules because you purchased the parts and you built it. When it is affected is when I buy it from Dell or Alienware or HP, whatever, then I can only get what's allowed in my state.
To my knowledge, when seeing that was that those regulations are mainly on these like bigger providers, right? Because they're the ones sort of building these PCs. They're the ones controlling the optimization of like right, like how much power is being used. In a lot of the parts that people end up buying on their own, and like a certain motherboard for their personal like what's that called DIY, right? Do it yourself
Yeah.
sort of
Yep.
computer. When you build like one and you're using a motherboard, most of the motherboards, like the best motherboard you can get currently right now on the field, it believe it or not does not take up much power. It doesn't idle and it doesn't like take a crazy amount of power because it's optimized for energy consumption as well as
Well, and
choosing how it's used.
that's the key thing that is confusing to me because for the people that know computer tech, let's say you have a crazy overbuilt motherboard, way overbuilt VRM, 8-channel RAM, and you're running a Threadripper chip on it that's 3 or 400 watts to power the chip. And then let's say you put 2 or 3 graphics cards that are pulling 300 watts apiece. And, let's say your computer is on average running over 1200 watts, and maybe you have a 1600-watt overhead power supply in it, and you're pulling that much power while you are using the computer, they say that that's okay. But it's when that computer idles, they say that you have to have like between 15 and 30 minutes to ramp down the power usage. So while that computer is idle and you're away from it, it has to be below a certain threshold. And that's where they're making the requirements that aren't allowed. So if you have this crazy powerful computer and you're using it for your work, that's okay. But when you walk away from it, it has to go below a certain threshold. And if it doesn't, that's where they're saying that those kind of computers aren't allowed. Because that means when you're not using the computer, but it's still pulling 3 or 400 watts from the grid, even though you're not touching it, That's what they're trying to minimize on. So when they want it to go, I thought it was something down below like 35 watts or something for it to be idle. And then it said after 15 to 30 minutes or something like that, if you aren't using the computer at all, they actually want the computer to either go into an extremely low power state or completely shut off. And I think that's the important parts for the grid saving, because let's say we're at work for 8 hours a day, maybe 4 or 5 hours is on my workstation computer, but now I'm away from the office or whatever for the rest of the day. Those computers, if they're running in the background the whole time, that's where the energy problems are. That's where they want them to be shut off.
So let's say, for example, I work at an accounting firm or something, right? And they're just buying a bunch of stationary desktops. And by them buying these desktops, a lot of times these providers aren't or like these companies are not looking at, okay, well, are these computers energy efficient, whatever, good for, the good of the environment, whatever. And they're just buying any type of computer like that's made by Dell or made by these providers in bulk, right? And I could assume like that is what is probably taking up a lot of the energy, because as opposed to someone who's building a lap or like a PC, themselves, they're kind of more conscious of the tech that they're putting in there. And these companies aren't worried about what's in the PC. They're just buying a PC. And so a lot of these people as well that are using the PC, like an account or something like that, they're probably not like these individuals that are worried about the tech that's not theirs, right? Like they're just like, I just use it just to use it. I'm a user. That's it. As opposed to someone who builds it. So I could see why they're sort of passing these regulations for these companies like Dell and such like that. But it is also worth mentioning that with you building your own PC, you're supposed to pay attention to, and especially in these areas, those sort of idle thresholds and the thresholds of it was like something about how much power your PC's taking. They have like a website where you're supposed to sort of gauge. It has like
Yeah,
a gauge or something like that, telling
they're
you how much
pushing
energy you're
everyone
using.
to look at the requirements. So, like me, I always build my own stuff. So, there's somewhere I can go to look at the requirements to see if I'm building it to that specification. But for DIY builders building it for personal use, they're not requiring it. But I can definitely see in the future that they're going to start to require it. So I don't know how far in the future, if that's going to be soon or late. Um, but yeah, there is like the website for you to go look up the specification, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how many watts and everything that you're allowed to have at idle. So there is a place you can go to where if you're building your own, you can build it to that specification, but they're not requiring it. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to see if they start to require that, and then what kind of changes we're going to see after that.
So I
Because
have a
right now it's just
question.
affecting the big box
I have
places.
a question for you. Is like, do you feel that it is a bad or good implementation in terms of this whole energy
Well,
saving?
from our earlier conversation about, moving into the house, I'm that person that's always, you know, shutting off the lights, conserving energy, doing all that. And I mainly do that for my own NIPSCO bill, because obviously that makes the bill cheaper. But when you think of it, you know, how many other people around me? We have neighborhoods where there used to be cornfields and now there's 400 houses. They all probably got an Xbox, a gaming computer, an office computer, something of that nature that's pulling power. In my house, I shut everything off when I'm not using it. My TV has a timer to where if it's not doing something within so much time, it shuts itself off. I'd imagine other people are probably doing the same thing. But you also got to think, okay, I'm doing that for my electrical bill, but if everyone else is leaving their stuff on, maybe they're not thinking about themselves personally for their electrical bill. But when you look at the grid, when you think about those 300 or 400 houses just for one neighborhood, maybe, you know, now everyone's going back to school, so maybe before when it was the height of the summer and everyone's on gaming and everything because we have to be isolated in the house, there's a lot of energy being used, especially for the people that walk away from their game system to eat lunch or step away from the office, with that hour of time that you're sitting there not using the system, but the system's still up and running. That's putting a lot of load. And I'm only talking about three or 400 house neighborhood. There's thousands of houses around me. So if everyone is, starting to obey these restrictions and saving energy, that's, we got a coal fired turbine for our energy system over here at NIPSCO. When it goes over a certain threshold and they have to fire up another turbine because we have so much things just idly not actually being used, if we cut back on that and we're able to run off of less energy as a whole for that power plant, just think of the amount of emissions that's not being up in the air. It goes a lot farther than just you guys paying the bills. It's actually how much energy we're literally wasting. And, as we were saying earlier, how many houses and how many neighborhoods go up. It's hard to make a power plant bigger because those spaces are already filled. So in the future, we're going to get to the point where we can't produce enough. So we have to regulate it now.
Yeah.
And, I'm assuming I keep on seeing more and more ads for like solar energy and everything like that. And I keep on seeing like more and more people around me where they put solar panels and stuff on the roof. If we moved more towards that and we were using like battery backup and solar power or more of the wind turbines, stuff like that, I think would be really the way to go. But for now, just reducing and being more thoughtful of the energy that we're using, I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest steps we could take as a whole.
Yeah,
So I
and
do understand why.
in terms of that, I mean, I definitely agree with you on that stance. I'm happy that it's kind of it sounded crazy at first when you first sent this to me. I was like, oh, that sucks. But the more kind of research we did into it, I was like, oh, this makes sense. This is actually kind of saving our environment in so many different aspects that we didn't realize. And I also think about this aspect as well is that it definitely is pushing tech to be more efficient. And I think we needed that sort of minimal upset, so to speak, to sort of wake the tech company or like these sort of, yeah, these tech companies into this idea that okay, we have to build first off our PCs more energy efficient, and two, we like for the individuals building these particular parts of tech is like okay, well, how can we make it more energy efficient and efficient in general, right? Like in terms of how it works and how it runs. I feel like this is pushing tech to the correct boundaries that it needs to go.
Right.
Because if not, we're
And
not
we're
going to have that
also
innovation.
yeah, and we're moving to an era where we're not, you know, 10, 15 years ago, there was probably a lot of companies where you had an office and maybe that office had a bunch of cubicles and they still had computers, but they were not used much. And maybe they had a 15, 20, maybe even a 40-watt bulb at their desk. That was the power consumption for that person. And then they maybe used a little bit on the computer, but old computers, they didn't pull a lot of power. Well, now everything requires a computer. And typically, let's look at your office computer, the cheap Dell that you buy by the hundred to fill up your office so everyone has a computer to use. They usually have 3 or 400 watt power supplies in them. So now you're powering that computer on top of just the lighting and stuff in your office for people to work. So, your office that took, let's just use simple numbers, 1,000 watts to light up the office for people to work. Okay, now you ordered 100 computers, 100, 400 watts times 100 for each computer, plus the lighting. That's why everything has to be more efficient.
With that said, there's another fantastic sort of topic in the news in terms of tech that we're definitely going to get to. One that really interested me in something that I didn't mention at the top of this episode is the new Stream Deck from what company? Austin, I believe you sort of were the head of this topic, so I'd love to hear more about this new Stream Deck and how it could possibly be like the Switch killer.
Yeah, so I actually, scrolling through the old TikTok is how I ended up finding it. And basically, I don't remember the Valve, that's who it is. Valve is the one that's creating it. And basically, in a sense, just going to be a handheld PC is basically what they're saying it's going to be. That's how they're advertising it. It's a handheld PC that, and their goal is you can play any game that you can think of that's on Steam is going to be able to be played on that. And it the design itself looks a lot like a Nintendo Switch. Like the only difference I really see is maybe it's a little bit thicker, and that the controllers or the a Switch you have Joy Cons, but on this they're like it's built in. You're not taking these things off. Um, and it's like I said, their goal is to make it to where any game possible. So like The Witcher 3, I don't know if Steam has Call of Duty, but if that's on there, Call of Duty, any game you can think of wanting to put on that thing. They've got like three different versions of it. The first one is a 64 gigabyte version, which is 64 gigabyte embedded multimedia card. I guess the processor in it isn't as fast as the bigger ones, but then there's like one that's like $130 that's 250 gigabytes of storage. And then if you want to spend $650, you can get basically half a terabyte. It's kind of interesting that in a sense we've got a new player in the gaming scene right now because there's rumors right now that Netflix is going to jump in and like a few Google tried to jump in and that didn't go too well for them. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, is this something you guys would like maybe buy or I
So
think I might buy it
definitely
depending
off the
on.
rip, I'll have to say that I first off want to make a correction. I said Stream Deck. I meant Steam Deck. I read my notes incorrectly. But with that said, yeah, no, I think it's the console that I tell you what that I'm looking for, right? Because like you were saying, it's everything and anything off of Steam that is available on the launcher of Steam, by the way. For those of you who are kind of unaware maybe about PC gaming, it's predominantly like an app or platform essentially where you can buy other games like Call of Duty. Call of Duty, unfortunately, is actually on an Epic launcher. I don't know if it's available on Steam, but as far as I'm aware, right, it's on Epic, which is kind of similar to
So,
Steam. But I will say this: I am very excited to see this in the sort of console era, and I'll have you give your thoughts in a second, Tyler. Yeah, I'm excited that it's entering the console space, right? Especially the mobile console space because I absolutely love the Switch. I think it is such a great innovation. And it's like I don't know. I love that this factor that I can plug in into my TV essentially and use as a normal console, or I take it on the go. It's so versatile that it makes me smile, right? And to see something like a Steam Deck sort of enter in the sphere is going to be absolutely just fantastic because it's like I don't know if you guys remember the PSP, which was PlayStation's version of like the handheld, which is like a
a
Game Boy,
joke, really.
and it was cool when they first brought that out because you were getting like these quote unquote like normal games, right? It wasn't just Nintendo games. So that's definitely think gonna disrupt the sphere for Nintendo as well. I think if anything, they're more likely rather than competing against like Xbox and PlayStation. I feel like it's a direct competition with the Switch. Is it a Switch killer? I don't know. I think time will tell. It's hard to say because I don't think it's not out yet. But I mean, where gaming is going is kind of intense because I know in terms of Google, they're still working on rather than a console. I know they're diving more deep into the this gaming streaming sphere as well as Xbox, but Xbox, might I add, is doing it way better. And you're going to be able to stream from anything, including your phone. Like I have a beta version right now where I can stream Xbox games on my phone and play it. I haven't tried it just yet, but um, they're adding this sort of ability now, and so like that's kind of getting crazy. But I still don't think Steam's in direct competition with them. I definitely think it's a Switch versus Steam sort of sphere. And do I think Steam could win? Yes, but it's hard to tell. It's a little too soon. And I did want to touch on something really quick. Yes, I did hear about Netflix sort of jumping in the sort of gaming sphere, but it's I believe in streaming. But we'll definitely save that as a topic for another time. I'm gonna hand the mic over to Tyler so that way he could sort of uh, give his thoughts.
So it's hard to say. I don't think it's competing with the Switch necessarily, because the Switch, in my eyes, it's a different style of gaming. When they advertise the Steam Deck, they're pointing towards AAA titles. Um, so I think the audience is going to be a little bit different. But when I was looking into it, I looked at the specs, what type of processor they're using, how much RAM, how much storage, how fast the storage is. And I have the basic ones in front of me right now. Like again, this is for your computer nerds out there. A 4-core, 8-thread processor, 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz. That's pretty, I mean, we're talking only 15 watts, so it's going to be like a laptop grade kind of energy efficient processor, but that's pretty fast. And then for the GPU, it's all AMD based. So the RDNA 2, AMD's been talking a lot of stuff about their RDNA, and the second generation is supposed to be a pretty big step up. But what gets me, the biggest one here, is when you go down to the RAM, 16 gigabytes, 5,500 mega transfers. And here's the big part, it's running in quad channel. A lot of gaming computers out there only run dual channel unless you're running extremely expensive hardware. So there's already higher bandwidth in this thing than a lot of gaming computers out there. A processor now, if we're talking about the new generation, how much more efficient, even though it's a 15-watt chip, you can kind of look at the same way as Apple's with their M1. They have one of those low 10, 15-watt chips, and it's outperforming a lot of really high performing Intel chips. If AMD's got the same thing going right here, that APU, which is the CPU and graphics card combined, there could be a lot of potential there. But when I looked a little bit deeper into it, apparently you can just outright install Windows on it. So if you install Windows on it, you can install any game launcher you want. So Steam, of course, it's a Steam Deck. Epic Games, whatever Call of Duty's on, you can install all of those different launchers if you're running Windows.
Before you go ahead, I did read further down while you guys were talking.
Yep.
It's literally PC, so you can put Windows on it and have like use Steam. You can have the Epic Store. You can even put Game Pass on it.
Oh
Xbox.
wow.
Oh,
Yeah, you can turn it into a Microsoft machine. It'll run whatever my $4,000 gaming computer, it's all installed on Windows, and Windows runs on this device. So it might not run 4K at 90 frames per second, but you might be able to run the same game at 1080p 30 frames per second, which if you're talking about a handheld gaming pad, awesome. I mean, I would totally do that. But you can put everything you want. And then I'm looking into it. It has a docking station that you can put, you plug it in. You can plug it into the TV and play on the couch with an Xbox controller. You can do all that kind of stuff with it. So,
See, and that's when, like, I know you said that it's two different, how would you say, two different sort of audience bases, right? Because you have all these AAA titles, but I think, I mean, Nintendo, first off, definitely is a Mario or something like that. Their games are, I would believe, considered AAA. So this is why I say that it's a direct competition with more likely
well, and that's
Nintendo
not
is
to say
because
you
like
can't play those games because
you're
you could get an emulator and play all the same stuff on it.
yeah, and what the reason why like I feel like it's in direct competition with Switch is because it's like direct competition with mobile gaming, right? Like this ability to have a handheld console, and take it anywhere, that is where the competition kind of sets. Because normally, when someone thinks like, oh, okay, well, I want a console that I'm gonna be playing on the go, what do you think of? The Switch. Now you're having this new Steam Deck that is apparently
Mhm.
now going to give you the ability to play Epic games as well as Xbox Game Pass. So you're really just stepping into the territory of like, okay, what mobile console would you choose over the other one? I mean, for what it sounds like on paper, I would probably choose the Steam Deck over a Switch. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely tough to say. But that's why I say that it's sort of in direct competition with
Um,
the Switch.
I think what you're saying does make sense. I think it probably, in a sense, in essence, it's in the same, like, it's in mobile gaming, which I guess in theory, basically Nintendo's competitor right now before the Steam Deck comes out is basically just phones.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of games, like a lot of, I've noticed that a lot of mobile games are also being put onto the Switch because the Switch is basically a glorified phone. It's got basically phone processors in it. If it's like a big phone that you're playing games on. But I think the reason that Nintendo really doesn't need to worry at all about this is Nintendo is almost, unless they really screw up, like nobody's going to kill them. They're going to have to kill themselves because they have so many of like the greatest franchises that you can think of. They have all those, the Mario, like one of the greatest franchises ever. They have Pokemon, like the most sold media pieces of media ever. Um, they just have like so many, like their library of games. They have the best like exclusives of any of the consoles, and I think unless they decide to like let somebody use one of their exclusive characters and then they slowly start putting those games on other platforms, I don't think that there's any way that Nintendo will ever die. They're just not like Xbox where for a while Xbox really didn't have that many exclusives. It was kind of just like Xbox was relying on like the power um, more than the games themselves. Whereas like with the Switch, we're just like we're just putting this thing out. It's not super powerful, but we have the games, and nobody's gonna care. And I also think that the Steam Deck isn't like the Switch is aimed more towards casual gamers, and the Steam Deck seems to be more towards like hardcore PC gamers who like when they're not at their PC, they want to still be playing. Got the Steam Deck to just whip out of their backpack and just go. So like, is it a competitor? Kind of. Is it really? I don't think so.
I will say this in terms of Nintendo. I would like to see definitely more exclusives and then push it out, right? Because it definitely feels like they very much use like the same few franchises, and I hope that they branch out to more because I feel like eventually in terms of like them dying out and like people losing some inkling of interest in them, it's gonna be because like they're like, okay, well, this is like the eighth Mario game that you've released, and now like for example they started diving back into Metroid. That's coming out in October, so it's like they're very much hopefully starting to dive into the other amazing exclusives that they own. But that again is definitely a topic for another time. But I totally agree with you. I do not think this is a Switch killer at all. But I don't know. It's definitely gonna rival and add some competition in the mobile gaming sphere. And yeah, that's why in terms as well. Like with the Xbox streaming and Google Stadia and all that jazz, I feel like that is a whole different battle on its own. But in this sort of sphere, yeah, it's gonna add for more competition, and I think that's what the people deserve, and it's what's gonna sort of keep prices down. But we are getting close to time, so we're gonna have to wrap up. And some of the topics that we didn't get to today, we're gonna have in our next episode, which hopefully will be airing the following Friday following Friday. So we have a new schedule. We'll be only posting 3 times a month. We'll always notify you as to when the new episode is coming up. So please follow us on our social media. We're doing our best and our darnest to make sure that we're updating you guys via social media when our episodes post. Always expect it on a Friday or within the weekend. Okay, it's going to be from Friday to Sunday range. A new episode will come out. Again, only 3 times a month. So expect that out of 3 weekends, we'll have a new episode up for you guys. But thank you so much. Again, don't forget to check our sponsors in the description down below. All of their links are there. And I'll offer you guys the question. Are you excited for the Steam Deck? Do you think it's a Switch killer? And how do you feel about the energy saving effort that, how would you say, that California and other states are taking the measure for? Do you think it needs to be implemented as soon as possible? Please, again, leave those comments down below. We want to hear from you guys. Again, thanks for listening, as always. We love you. Bye.